Welcome to ABONG. Today we're going to build the Mini Ballista kit. We'll step you through the instructions and we'll give you some tips and tricks to make the build a little easier and wind up with a nicer kit. Let's get started.
So we'll start by preparing the parts. Just remove the string right for now, and we'll take care of the 3 pieces of ammo. And then we'll take the string and we're going to divide the string into 3 even pieces. So you can measure this just with your fingers like this. It's not anything too technical here. It doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere close is good. So we'll just slice that with a pair of scissors, one end and the other end. Perfect. Now we can set those aside. And so we're about 1 minute and 30 seconds in here. So the next step we're going to do is sand. So we're going to start with a 150 grit sandpaper and then move to a 220 grit. So the 150 is a little bit coarser, the 220 is a fine grit. And we're going to use a sanding block. This is just a plain ordinary piece of wood, and we use it to wrap the sandpaper around so that we do an even job on the sanding. So we'll just wrap the sandpaper around it, and we'll speed up this next part here so you don't have to watch forever. You're going to scrub basically all the all the laser residue off of the board, and just work back and forth and work on a little bit of an angle before finally finishing up working with the grain. So this is about 10 times speed, and just making sure that all the dirt and all the residue is removed. So taking a little bit of extra time here really makes a big difference on the finished kit. So you know, it's not the funnest thing in the world, but take your time and be careful. Go over the board a couple of times and check it. So once you've done the 150 grit sandpaper, we can switch to the 220 grit. So again, just wrap it around the block and go to town on the pieces again. So scrub it each side, and you can just work with the grain in this case, and it's a lot less work on this one. So you can see the pieces are looking nice and clean, and it provides a good glue surface as well. So I'm just going to get rid of some of the sawdust here, and then we'll move on to the next step. In case you're wondering, there is a garbage can there. So we're about 10 minutes into the build right now, and now we're going to start gluing things. I use this LePage super glue. It's a decent sized bottle, that's why I bought this particular brand. They all work the same. Just be careful with it. You can glue your fingers together, you can glue your fingers to your head, you can glue your head to the table, but it's very useful. So a lot of times the end of the string or the cord will be frayed, and it makes it difficult to push through holes and so forth. So just adding a little bit of super glue onto the end, and I'm going to pinch it here, and then giving it a snip. It gives you a firm piece of cord to push through the holes, and it won't fray, and it holds the knot better. So it's just a little tip here. You can use it anytime that we're working with the cord. So let's get to work on the nock. So there's just a couple of parts here. We'll just test fit them first, make sure everything fits together. So that's the way it's going to look. So we'll take it apart, add a little bit of the super glue, center the parts, make sure everything's aligned. Just a little bit of glue does fine. It doesn't take very much at all to hold it together and get a good strong bond. So you want to make sure everything's nice and straight, and then using that glued end of the string, you can push it through the 3 holes so that it's nicely aligned. So a little bit of a wiggle here to get it through the last hole. And there we go. Perfect. So we want the string to be even on both sides of the nock. So I'm just going to stretch it like so, and then I'll tie a knot on either side up against the side of the knot. And what this does, by putting a knot on both sides, it just keeps it from slipping one way or the other, and keeps the arms in alignment later on. So just a little trick here. And it's kind of tricky to get the second knot really flush up against the side of the nock, but you just sort of pinch one side of the knot and pull the other side, and it doesn't have to be perfect, you're just trying to get it close. So there we go, and pull that tight. There we go. Excellent. So you can see sort of the idea here where you've got the knot, and it's not going to slip through one way or the other. So we're about a little over 15 minutes into the build, and now we're going to start building the barrel. So we break out the parts for the barrel and set them all aside. And it's always a good idea to dry fit the parts before you assemble them, just to make sure that everything fits and that you don't need to open up any of the holes. Everything should be pretty good, but we're going to start by putting the two side slots into the bottom, then put the top on, and the two cheek pieces. So everything seems to fit okay. We'll go ahead and add some glue. So the first part's in, and a little bit of glue here. This is sped up around 3 times, I think. There, so we've got the first part in. Now we're going to put the top on. Excellent. And with a little bit of care, you can make sure that all the marked side of the pieces are hidden when the kit is assembled. It's really important that the nock goes in before you continue, because once you put these cheek pieces on, the nock is trapped in there forever. So make sure that it gets put in before you put these cheek pieces on. A little bit of glue on the other side, and the other cheek piece goes on. And now you're going to put the muzzle end on the barrel. Perfect. And again, the marked side is glued down. And now the breech end, and this also forms the rear sight. Perfect. All glued on there. Excellent. So you can see the nock slides back and forth, and we're ready for the next step. So now we're going to start working on the frame of the upper part. So it has the sight, it has a couple of brace pieces, it has the base pivot, and it has the upper and lower frame. So we start with the two frame pieces, or the two brace pieces, pardon me, and a little bit of glue, and it goes right in the slot, and the one goes on the other side in the slot, and that just keeps the upper and lower frame from flexing too much. All right, so make sure that the bottom piece is going to fit. We'll just slide that in place. Make sure that the notch in it goes towards the back of the barrel, and the top piece again goes on with the pointy side facing away from the muzzle, and the sight just snaps right into the top there. So you can see the rear sight and the front sight are aligned, and here we're just putting in the mount for the pivot. So the two pieces of the pivot get put together, make sure they're nice and well aligned, and then snap that into the bottom. Perfect. So we're less than half an hour into the build, and we're well along our way. So now we're going to build the base. So there's a couple of pieces here. We'll just bring them out of the carrier board. There we go. So we'll start by putting the two full braces together. A little bit of glue. Again, it's very important that they're lined. And now we'll put the side pieces in. So the side piece goes into the upright, and then the upright gets attached to the full frame. So we'll add a little bit of glue it to the upright. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get the things put together, but it works. There you go. So now we're going to do the other side, same thing. Glue it together, and now that gets put onto the base. So add a little bit of glue. And this took a little bit of pressure to get put in, just because things weren't perfectly aligned, but once it's snapped together, everything is exactly aligned. There we go. So, and then the pin is a square pin, and it just allows the top to pivot on the base. So just put a little bit of glue on one side, and away we go. So now we're at the point where we can start to do the arms. So the arms are held in place with a skein on both sides. And a skein is just basically a bundle of twisted rope. So there's 2 halves of each throwing arm. We're going to glue those 2 halves together. Again, try and make sure that everything aligns perfectly. And we'll do the other side here. Get the alignment as close as you can. And now we're going to do the winder bars. So there's a little bar that goes on the top of the wheel. You're gluing that in place. And again, you can take care to make sure that the marked side is down on all pieces. And these pieces all snap together nicely. And that's 3. And oh, I left 1 on the board. We'll get rid of that one too. Perfect. There might be some little splinters and so on the parts when you break them out of the board. You can just trim those off. You can bend them off with your hands. So now comes the trickiest part. So we're going to add a little bit of glue to the end of each of the cords. We're going to snip those so that they're easier to thread. And now we're going to thread that cord through the winder to form the skein. So it goes through one side of the bar, down through the holes, then through the bottom of another winder bar, and up through the holes. So we're making 2 loops. Now we're going to go through one side and over the bar. Make sure there's enough string to go through all the way. So up over the bar, down through the hole again, through the 2 holes, and down through the bottom winder bar. And again, you want to go over the bar so it goes through one side and then over to the next side and back through the holes. Perfect. And now back through finally the last winder bar. And now you can slide the arm, throwing arm in. So you want it to be oriented properly. Check the instructions for that. And then just give the string a little tug and you can tie a knot over the top. So I'm just going to do a simple double knot and just add a little drop of glue. And so that knot's not going to go anywhere. Perfect. So we've trimmed the knot, and now we're going to do exactly the same thing for the left skein. So again, through the top of one winder bar, through the 2 holes, to the bottom, to the winder bar, and making 2 loops. And up through the top, just again, there we go. Perfect. Down through the bottom winder bar. Whoop. There we go. Excellent. Now we're going to go back up one more time. Through the plate, make sure it's on the opposite side. And now we can slide that second throwing arm through. You want to make sure that there's 2 strings on either side of the throwing arm before you tie this knot. Perfect. A little drop of glue. And we can snip that. So we're about 40 minutes into the build here. Again, we're just about finished. Just a couple of steps left. So if you turn the winder bars, you're actually adding tension to the throwing arms, and that's what powers up the whole ballista. So here what I'm doing is I'm assembling the drawstring. So I'm going to put that final cord through. I'm going to tie a knot so that it's nice and straight. So positioning the knot's a little bit tricky here. You can see that I'm trying to get a straight line across through the nock to the other side, and that's where those knots that we tied in the nock string help. So here we're tying the other side, and just a little check, things are a little bit out of line, so before I tighten the knot up, I'm just going to try and tighten those knots up again and straighten things up. So a little bit of fiddling around. So you do this before you do the final tighten on the knot. There we go. So I've just adjusted the length a little bit so things are even. And once I'm happy with that, we go. I can add a little drop of glue and trim the strings. A little bit of glue on both sides, and that glue just makes sure that that knot is never going to let go. And now I can twist the winder bars to power up the ballista, and you can see the more you turn it, the more power you have. You don't need a whole lot. You'll find that if you add too much pressure, it's going to break the frames. So let's go ahead and make a trigger pin. Just as it's out of an ordinary everyday paper clip, I'm going to snip the short loop off of this paper clip and just snip one of the ends shorter. There's nothing too precise here, just bending one end in to a little D on the end of it so that you've got a pin with a D, and then you can slide the nock back through the breech and there's a hole there for the trigger. You're all set. So we're virtually finished here. We've got it loaded, fire, and we're done.
Well, that's about it for now. I hope you enjoyed the build video, and I hope you successfully built your kit. Check out some of our other videos that have our other products, and don't forget to click subscribe so you can be the first to know when we issue new products. You also want to visit our website, abong.com, to see all of our products. Bye for now.